Hey friends, welcome back. I'm here with Amy Cerny Vasterling. She's a future-focused public speaker, author, teacher, and intuitive. She's sharing the importance of returning to your personal knowing, and based on over 2 decades of observational research, she exposes what it takes to collapse this sort of narcissistic social disordering, resulting in all this natural equality that we're hoping for. She empowers individuals and communities to dynamically return to the truth of who they are so they can live their fullest life. Have you ever felt like you were called, you were different, you just didn't know why? This might be the book for you. And today we're going to talk about her book, about her knowing this deeper thing that comes from this letting go of the status quo and leaning into your deeper self. And I can't wait to dive into this conversation. I've been really excited to share this with you all after reading her book. Amy, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks, Azul. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So I always love to kind of start with where this seed of a book kind of came from for you. Because for some people, like, oh, I always knew I needed to write a book, or nope, it was somebody kept nudging me. Or tell us a little about your sort of story. I know you share a little bit about this book in your book, but since they don't know, share about how this book started to come to be, because all their journey is going to come from you expressing themselves. Because a lot of people listening to the show, I mean, are like you, wanted to write a book and just didn't know if they could or should. And they're waiting for some sign, or when they get better at it, or whatever these things, these voices are. Yeah. Tell us a little about your book writing, how it began.
Yeah, I really began a long time ago, but along the way, I never said to somebody, I'm going to write a book. It's actually others said to me, I think you're going to write a book one day. And the foundation of the book came from childhood, where I could see that my childhood home was about disconnection and the communication styles and the way that we interacted. And then I have siblings that are quite a bit older than I am, and I watched them be highly talented people, but not make the choices that would really see them to thrive. So I came to ask the question, why don't all people thrive? And carried that with me until my 20s. And then I started asking the question, if one could collapse narcissism in a completely curious, non-sociological, psychological way, what would that look like and how would it work? And that became the foundation of looking at this. Then fast forward of many years, I wrote about 260 pages, and I eventually realized I can't do this myself, and hired an editor to work alongside me. And really what she did is taught me how to write a book, which was pivotal for me. And what happened as a result is, as I was writing this book, she said it would take about 3 months. And it took us 3 years. And a year in, I said to her, we've got to speed this up. Like, this is taking forever. And she said, you're really trying to communicate something very difficult to convey, and I can't. And then what I noticed is, as I let go, I could see that she'd pass me a chapter, and the next day I'd be ready with the chapter I had to pass back to her. You know, it just seemed like it was fluid, and it really made me think this is right on time in a way I can't understand. But what also happened is, I'm a prolific writer, and I didn't know that. I know that I like to write. But while I was writing the book, I'd say to the editor, I have this whole chunk that I'm taking out. What should I do with it? And then I'd say, well, maybe I'll use it as an article, and I'd stick it in a file. And it turned out that I had about 350 pages worth of material. And I set that up in 3 subsequent book outlines. And I've already gone through and refined each of those. And then I'm working on a second draft of the second book. So I think that's what I would say to the listener is, you never know what's going to happen for you or how it's going to happen, but it's about understanding that if it needs to come, you'll find the way. I sorted through a bunch of editors, and then this one, I've never really maybe felt home in my life, or at home in my life, not as a result of being places I could, I liked where I lived, all these things, but in truth, that's what I was looking for all my life. And her name is Beth. And all of a sudden, that week that I met her, I met 4 people named Beth. And about a few months later, we were talking about that. And she said, Beth, Amy, it means home. Okay, the book is taking me home. So there started to be these other synchronicities that helped me realize this is something I meant to do. And that's how it happened.
Wow. We're going to dive more into this. This is really fascinating. But I want to come back to something you said, because I think it could be a trigger or a misunderstanding when we use the word narcissist, narcissism, whatever, because it's a polarizing word. only because people are allowing it to be, except for understanding how you are using it in your book to describe behaviors or human qualities, not a person, not judging somebody. Tell us a little bit about why this was, looking for this pattern and how that sort of came to be, and what would your definition of narcissism be? Because there is a definition and we can talk about it, but I want to make sure that the listener isn't taking some social media or some news media version of what this means, and just hear it from you.
Yeah, that's a really important thing to hear how I define it, because I define it, I don't even look at what it means in psychology. But I think one of the problems about writing a book is it takes such a long time, or it did for me, that by the time you're finished with it, you're already into far depthier thinking. And in the book, I don't talk about narcissism very much. I really only reference it once or twice, because the book isn't about narcissism. It's about what we do to stop narcissism on the other side. And so how I would define what I'm talking about is narcissistic social disordering. And to me, disorders mean that we've had something disrupted in what we know is true about us. And that could be a very simple thing of, when we're a baby, we know when we're hungry. When we're a baby, we know when we're upset, right? But then when we're 1.5 or 3, our parents, when we're cranky, say, oh, you're just hungry. Like these small micro pieces of being told what we're feeling, who we are, and not having that autonomy or making the choice for ourselves, starts to separate us from ourselves, and that advanced into future years creates this disordering. And then we're questioning, who are we all together? Like, what does this mean? How do I become or be who others need me to be? Because clearly it's not okay to be myself. And that's where we, have this movement of, I feel stuck. I feel like, what's my purpose? It all fuels into that. But what I came to find is this epic piece of the model is what lords over all of that. So even if you meditate and do all these things, there's still this model that lords over you. And that's a massive piece that I came to find.
Yeah. I'm great. I'm glad. Thank you for that. And I think I have more questions. So that I don't know if it's good or bad about this topic, but you're talking about this sort of way of seeing yourself in a different way. And you talk about the model throughout the book. And I think that would be useful to help people understand is, what is the model that you describe? Why are we in some model that, why aren't people stepping out of it? If you're noticing it and others are noticing that there's this pattern, what's keeping us stuck there, and what can we do?
Because people aren't noticing the pattern. If you look at, like, I came out of the spiritual community, but I couldn't connect there. It didn't work for me, because a lot of the things being said were other people's ideas. People weren't really thinking for themselves. People would say to me, oh, this is 5D. And I'd say, why would you label it like that? What if it's 29D? And because you're not actually looking at it and challenging it, you're missing something that's really extraordinary, right? That troubled me greatly. I said, I want to challenge things and ask the question. So let's go back to the model. Really, how I define that is, the model is control that we assert to maintain or advance our place in the hierarchy. And to move forward on that, control is asserted through the hierarchy in the way that some have no consequences and others have far too high of a consequence. And a result of people having no consequences is they never fully mature. And in this era, it really is emotionally mature. And what happens is, those very people who have no have no consequences, they set the tone for society, and gone unchecked, that becomes our status quo, is this immaturity. And that's what I could see that others can't. About 15 years ago, I was doing intuitive readings quite frequently, and I came to realize everybody's lying to themselves. And it was, once in a while, this would happen where I'd have an epic realization that would leave me rocked for an unbeknownst amount of time, a day or a week, because I couldn't reconcile, I can't say that to people. How do I manage that? And I knew I was lying to myself, but if we're all lying to ourselves, why would we do that? What would be the benefit of that? So those were ways that I could see. And I mean, just as a quick share, I write something on Substack called The Future of Our Past. And it's to describe the model and this work from 250 years in the future, to show the potential of where we're headed, as well as ease the burden of having to recognize this lie. And so to answer your question a little more deeply is, I don't think that people realize that this model is here. And that's the problem. If we are taught to meditate or do this or do that, we're doing that within the model. And so we're not completely releasing ourselves into this, what is natural equality. And that's not what you'd think. It's like we're coming into a whole new system of being, but it's not epic or spiritual or, a wild thing. It's natural to humans.
I find it very interesting. There's so many things now, again, that aren't in the book that you're saying that I'm really curious about.
Yeah.
When you leave a spiritual community, whether it be faith-based or some other spiritual community or a group of people or a belief system, you're talking about, I'm assuming, and that's why I don't want to push too hard on it, is the model exists in all of the world, or are you talking about with the Western world? Tell us more, because to me, you're taking a bold claim to say the entire world is in this model. So if that's what you're saying, please say it so I could either challenge you or agree, because I'm curious what you think about that model. If it applies to the Western world, the New World, the modern world, how does that work?
Well, okay, so here's my opportunity is I was able to travel for the past 3 years freely. And so I got to ask the question to different cultures, to different people, to different family situations. And when I say, like, one of the things that I say is in the United States, there are 3 tenets that create malevolence in people or this disruption and disordering, which is being misunderstood, being displaced or misplaced. And in the United States, parenting is probably 98% of the time, people are parenting from misunderstanding their child. And the child grows up with that burden. And so then I'd say this to people in countries far away from my own, and they'd say the same things going on here. So I can't say the whole world has this, but I don't see any culture or country that seems to be really getting it where, well, I don't want to get into too many pieces because it could go far that way. But so I would say my suspicion is, and my hypothesis is, this is happening all over the world because it's a system in which we've been told there's judgment and judgment turns into control. And that becomes the hierarchy. And then we're all vying to try and to maintain or advance our place in this hierarchy that we don't even really know exists.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? Yeah.
Yeah. I think it only exists when we allow it to. And I think that's what the model is kind of pointing to that you're talking about. Like you could be in the system that's been created for you, that you've been born into, that you have allowed yourself to participate in, or you could be curious if this is really what is this what I'm, leaning into? Because some of the things that you're talking about, I started experiencing as an educator in the 3rd decade of my career. I started talking to people about, I think we're messing things up here. I think I've been misled, and I think that the kids know better than me. I think we should stop teaching them.
Correct.
So my whole TED Talk was based on this idea is that we're not listening to children, and it's intentional. It's not a mistake. We're controlling them, and kids love rules. Nature loves rules, but their rules are not malevolent. They are actually inclusive. The way children think about the world is different when they're unprogrammed or not attached to being good or bad. So much of the system is you're a good student, you're a bad student. The control, you talk about control, and that's all schools are, is control. I'm going to control you to the point where when the bell goes up, you know when to stand, and I don't have to say a word. The bell rings and you sit down. So when I used to coach schools decades ago, I would tell a principal if I was going to help, hey, so I'm here to help you transform your school and your community. Yeah. Go turn off the bells, will you? What? Can you turn off the bells? Well, you mean like the bells that ring between periods? Yeah. Turn those off, will you? Oh, I can't. What do you mean you can't? Well, that's like a district thing or something. They just go off. And I said, well, I'm leaving. There's nothing I can do here. If you believe you can't turn off the bells, there is nothing I can do to help you.
That's right. But that's the
And
system, right?
they figure out, okay, I'll figure, okay. I go into a teacher's classroom. Hey, could you do me a favor? Do you have a bathroom pass? Yeah. Throw it away. Throw it in the trash and never use it again. Well, how will I know when kids leave? I go, if I told you at your job you had to pick up something that both males and females carry into the bathroom and then bring back and you have to carry, wouldn't that be degrading? Yeah. That's what you're doing to children. Throw it away and never use it again.
Right.
Take down those rules that say your rules. There's no more rules. What? We can't. We need rules. I go, oh, see, I can't help you. You're not going to let go. And what I found is that I'm not a researcher. People ask, are you a researcher? Because I've asked what makes a good teacher great to lots of kids, 20,000 different responses. I'm like you. I'm just insanely curious because I made a mistake so much in my dang life.
Right.
What was the mistake you were making that caused this to open for you?
Staying in relationships. I mean, I think I say there's no way I could have learned all of this from being in an educational system, like going to a university or getting my PhD in psychology, or any of that. So it was being in the situations that cultivated the understanding. And I came thinking differently. Like you, Azul, I'm a very curious person. And instead of joining the spiritual, which I mean like a holistic community, I challenged it. If you're tired after you do a bunch of readings, you're probably not supposed to be doing that. You might feel tired like the end of a day of work, but something's wrong. I don't feel that way. Or so I challenge that and I found very different answers as a result. And to validate you, I have a kid who is scores like very adept at reading and writing, right? Like in the brilliant scale. And they read early, but we taught them to read. But the second kid asked me after lunch when they were 4.5, could I read to you after lunch? And I said, sure. And they sat down and they read a book that we didn't read often. And one of the words in there was interrupted, and they read it fluidly. And the point I'll make is it wasn't for the child about, look at, I can read. It was about, look at the world that I open myself to when I do read. And that was through observation for that child. And I've said highly sensitive children in a classroom who can't handle the classroom because it's too intense. If the teacher said to them, what interests you? And they said, knitting socks, the teacher could say, go down to the librarian and ask them how to figure that out. They get books. They teach themselves to read because they don't see the problem as learning how to read. They see the problem as learning how to knit socks. You know what I mean? Yeah, it motivates them in a different way. And it's about possibility. And I hear you talking about that. What's the possibility? And children are here to teach us. We are not here to teach them, but it goes against conventional wisdom because we think we know more, we have more experience, we're older, but that's not true. That's not
true. It's a belief, right? It's a societal belief.
It's part of the hierarchy.
You have to.
I'm older. Right.
Yeah. I know better. I'm more of a human than you are because of my age. Mind.
I mean, I think I tried to work with parents a long time, a few years, and they would just fight me. And I realized until they learn to parent themselves, it's such a primary relationship. And that child is very much like them. They just can't. And I'm not going to go after that until I figure out the way to get that to them. And then they can see the whole thing. And I just think when I was doing it, people weren't ready. And it's okay. Yeah. It's frustrating. Like for you, I'm sure.
Well, the frustrating part was, let's just say as a teacher, was that I didn't know what to do about it besides challenge the system. And I was already in one of the most innovative project-based schools in the world. I had people coming watch me teach from India, Australia, Spain, China, Malaysia in my classrooms, curious about how I was teaching young people to be authors and publish books at 13. Every kid left my class as a published author because it's like, if this is the biggest fear people have, let's just have you be published in this. Don't worry.
There you go. Right.
So I said, if you want to get your first job, you go to McDonald's or you go to the Star, whatever, and you fill out the resume and there's no job experience, just say your name and say, I don't have a lot of experience, but here's a copy of my first book. Let me know if you need someone who can work here. Right. You'll be fine. You have something to say that doesn't require your teacher to tell you what it is. Right. And if I could give you the openness to write whatever you want, you'll write the truth. If I tell you what to write, you're writing nothing.
Right.
You're learning to put words one after the other, and that's not what writing's for. Writing's for this deeper thing. It's a human quality that we have for a reason. It's not a mistake. It's not used. It's not an academic tool. I don't care that that's how you're being taught. It's magical, in my estimation. And you're right. The last decade of my teaching career, I was like, I hope nobody figures out I'm here just to learn from them. And I did.
See, you were lying still. Let me just point that out. I get
Yeah.
it. I get it. But when you know that, it's like you feel like you're living on the edge of something really amazing, right? Because you
Oh
can
my
see something
gosh.
others
Yes.
cannot. It's also there. I think there's a point in it for me that was daunting. Like I can see something others can't, and there's a point it became quite lonely for me.
Yeah. Lonely. Thank you for mentioning this, Amy. Because anyone's out there writing, if you stand on a box and start saying the sky is green when everyone thinks it's blue, it can be exhausting.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean you shouldn't stand on the box and shout it. Because
Right.
I'm a proponent of everyone has been put on this earth to do something. It's not the thing you probably think, and it's not the thing you're probably doing, but go be curious and do it, because that's you're like a flower. A zucchini isn't trying to become a rose. Why are you?
Right.
Be the zucchini. But so many of us have like this hierarchy you talk about in your book, Amy. I was like, oh gosh, this is my human. Thank you for introducing us.
Yes. Oh, I
Because
get it.
there's a
It's very
depth
simple.
there's a depth to this simplicity, Amy. What? Tell me more about. Let's weave a little bit deeper into this, because if we're going to shake up the model that's out there that people are following, the status quo, what can? Let's say someone's like, this is all new to them, Amy. They're like, I kind of think I know what you're talking about, but I
I
don't
know.
know what I can do. What would you suggest their first step be?
Well, I mean, this is kind of shameless, but read the book. And the feedback that I got from the advanced readers is you said everything that I have felt that there's no way I could have articulated for myself. And I look at this book as it takes a lot of trust to work with me or do that, go this direction, because you're a front runner if you're doing that. And that's scary. It is saying that the sky is green and standing on the box, right? So reading the book and seeing how it sits with you is, I really believe, the first step. And it is a handhold to say, I see you and here's where we are. But the next book that I'm writing, I have a lot of the ideas formed, and I don't know that I want to get into it here, but the problem is we can feel life feels like it's speeding up and speeding up and speeding up, and it's because we're in a fixed point model, and that's how narcissism persists. And that's not true to how humans operate. So, that's like the next step of it, I think will come in that next book, but that's the piece is if you read it and you're a curious person, I think you're going to get it and understand you're seen and heard, and you begin that process by just reading the book. And, yep, that's where.
You talk about this deeper knowing.
Mm-hmm.
And you mentioned it just now, like that there's something innate in us humans who knows that there's something either off
Mm-hmm.
or wrong or not lined up, not in alignment, not jiving. It doesn't seem to match up with the deeper knowing, the deeper self, this questioning that starts to happen. If someone's in that space where they're already sensing it, they've read your book and they're starting to feel like, oh wow, somebody else sees me, the parts of me that I couldn't talk about because I, like you said, didn't know this, but now I know. I had those feelings reading different books. Gay Hendricks, The Big Leap, Eckhart Tolle's A New Earth, Michael Singer's The Untethered Soul. The reason I talk of these books is because they were opening my mind to something I kind of never knew, but I always knew.
Right.
I even told that to Gay Hendricks. I go, I feel like I already knew this. He's like, right. I was like,
Mm-hmm.
how is that? How is that possible?
Because it's in you. It's
Let's
in
talk
all of
about that.
us.
That's what I want. You talk
Yeah.
about one of your chapters. You are the teacher. Tell us why you came to this, and how has it played out in your life? How has your life shifted when this knowing started to happen?
I'm going to totally derail your question. Sorry. That's the problem of interviewing somebody curious. Azul, so when the idea of being in our knowing is pretty simple. We've all probably experienced it, or been with somebody who was experiencing it and we felt it. It tends to be older women. When something's going on in a room and they stand quietly and they're a powerhouse and they don't need to say any words and everything is understood from what their body is saying and they're calm, that's it. It's not necessarily, our gut sense is important and so on, and that plays a role, but we're really starting out at the basics of, I know that I'm hungry, but we're moving to, I need not say anything because I know all of, let's just say, the crazy making going on over there will solve its own self. And we stay completely aligned. So my work is about really spanning the distance from the pain point of here and saying, bring what it takes to get to the end result of this, like to have it unfold and resolve itself. And going through that instead of meditating or so on, because what I found is a lot of those things that we're doing are so that we can stay in relationships when our body is seething in a relationship and crazed. We're calming ourselves to stay in an environment and sometimes with people that are not conducive to where we're headed. And when you mentioned how people each have something to give, in the future, how I see it is that why we aren't in a harmonized situation now is if everybody was self-expressing in the way that is true about who they are, we'd have everything solved. We would move fluidly. We'd see, athletes have much faster times because the way that we'd be able to understand would move so much faster, but in a direction that we all want to head. So life would be pretty delightful, right? So I derailed your question.
You did, Amy. It's your fault. You know what, though? That brings up the point you make about the child that did the echoing.
Mm-hmm. Echolocating.
Mm-hmm.
So it's interesting. I just had somebody that's a part of a religion send me the induction into their religion. And the first point that was made 3 times was that these people felt sorry for somebody who had a disability. And then I started, I'm a philosophical person. I started thinking about it and I'm like, isn't that funny? The 2 people in the world that I could use as examples that spent their entire life out of the model was A, because of their mothers, and B, they're both considered disabled people. And yet they literally brought something new to earth that is really important and powerful, right? And echolocation is one of them with Daniel Kish. Yeah. The poor guy doesn't know I talk about him so much.
Hey, he doesn't need to. That's why he exists.
I just can't wait till the day I get to meet him.
Yeah, I don't doubt you will. What I observe, and it's true in me, and maybe any of you who are listening, I am the least likely person to be where I am if you use traditional sense because, number one, I'm severely dyslexic. Words move, words dance, words disappear. I couldn't read at 3rd grade still. I memorized all those little Dick and Jane primers.
Yep.
And then stuff got stuck in my head, like sound it out. But later in life, I realized, I go, why do they keep saying sound it out? Those things don't make sounds. I don't get why they're saying that. It didn't work in my brain. But ironically, even though I haven't changed my dyslexia, it's just as rampant as it ever was. Right. I can speed read because I realized that I had been using a model they taught me, which is to sound out words, which since didn't make sense to me already, I couldn't read any faster because that doesn't make logical sense to my brain. Words don't make sound. They're just symbols. Yeah. Once I stopped doing that, I could read whole sentences at a time, one glance. And I read from top right corner to the bottom left corner. I just consume in large quantities. I don't consume word by word or syllable by syllable. My brain doesn't work like that. So I can speed read. And that's how I read all these books. I went from not reading books at all to devouring books at all lengths and being able to comprehend them because I stopped doing what people told me to do, which is sound it out. And I tell that if you're listening to write a book, stop thinking that there's a way. There isn't a way.
There isn't.
No. And the message to me, Amy, is far more important than the words on the page. The words are just pointing to something. They aren't the thing. Mm-hmm. So your message I want you to know, I hear your message. Even when the words were coming through, I'm like, I know these are words. I know there are stories, but I know the message is deeper than that, and I'm listening for it. And the listening is, this is Amy's way to explain what the model is, what all this is. What's your way, Azul? How would you see it? Because that's what your book's trying to do. That's the point.
It is. That's right.
So let's talk about this writing process. You said you thought it would take 3 months. It took 3 years, and then these other books were unfolding. Is it feel different now after your first book, that like these ideas and books can kind of, they're making more sense, how it gets knitted together?
Absolutely. I mean, like I think I mentioned here is that the editor really made me a better writer by, it was challenging for me, and I had to process a lot emotionally for a whole bunch of reasons. But they say, I mean, there's somebody in London that says the person who heals the most from the book is the author, right?
Yep, 100%.
But yeah, so I did. This next book is coming easily, and I feel the editor will be really pleased when I come with a really well laid out, they can get more strategic. And I think then that will only take a few months because it will be so ready. And I feel really happy with that. The thing that makes me the happiest is to sit and write. I just smile. And, I've gotten into writing groups and they complain. And I think, I don't know where to go that people love to write like I do.
No, not in the right.
Yeah.
I love to tell stories. That's where my gift is, because in school, remember, I'm the contrarian in school. I shouldn't have been in school, but the program was, if you're smart and you want validation, you go to school. So I have way more degrees than I need. Ironically, I have no degree in education, and I don't have any degree in English. I'm a publisher, a writer, and a book coach, and I don't have any of those qualifications. And I was an educator and a principal, and I have a superintendent certificate, but I've never had a degree in education. And the reason is that I didn't want to be programmed about how this is supposed to go. And that was counter to the whole system. But what it did for me is help me look deeper into children the way I had felt like I had not been seen. And when I did that, magic started to happen. Kids did things like write books at a young age who were reluctant in their other grades, became prolific writers. People who wrote me when they graduated graduate school as writers going, thank you, I did it. Even when everyone said I couldn't. I'm like, oh, it's amazing, but it's not me. I didn't do anything. I don't teach anything. I'm not here to, I don't teach writing. I'm not, like, you're probably not trying to teach spirituality. I'm not teaching writing. I'm teaching to be you on the page. And it shouldn't be hard to be ourselves, but that's what you're encouraging us, is like, you know who you are.
Right.
But my mom, my dad, my religion, my faith, my gender, my blah, my country. What country? You think there's countries? What are you talking about? You're a person. You're human. Right. Lean in.
Right.
What's the most exciting thing that's going on right now in your life that has been a result of this new way of living?
Traveling. I've been traveling the past 3 years, and that's my nature, and my lifeblood is to be out among people I don't know, and I meet people easily, and I love that. I mean, there was, in London, I was here about 2 weeks, and I thought, boy, I should get out and meet some people. So I arranged to be at some events, and that weekend I met 10 different women in some unlikely places too, not at the events. And I started a brunch club and they were like texting me, oh my God, I want to be a part of that. I thought that's pretty funny, but just that, living freely and enjoying it. And for me too, I'm going to say that we move out of the model sometimes in facets. So for me, there's still is one piece where there's a hang up that I'm working on to move out of the model, right? That's a part of the process. It's not that we all have it licked or figured out. But those things come up. So a work in progress, but I see it. I'm on it.
Work in progress.
Yeah.
Yeah. The only reason I'm able to help my clients write books is because I'm terribly challenged every time I sit to write. Not because of its difficulty, but because of I have to return to vulnerability and honesty. Mm-hmm. And the programming shows up harsh, and you're like, don't be vulnerable. You could get hurt. Don't say these things. You fall out of line. And my whole TED Talk was, we haven't been listening to children, and maybe you should. That's the whole point of the TED Talk, period. Yeah. But it took persuasion. And I have people from all over the world reach out to me, and I'm like, this is a phenomenon that's necessary. I will continue to teach young people and teachers of young people to be creatively non-compliant. That's what I call it. Mm-hmm. Because in that creativity of non-compliance, they're going to find the truth. And I am so grateful that you wrote your book. Tell us where we can find more about you. I'm sure they're going to want to know where to connect with you. Tell
Yeah.
us where they might find you.
I think the best places are on my website, which is just amyvasterling.com. And I think you'll probably share the link, Azul. And then YouTube is another great place because you can see how I'm speaking about the model. And this work takes repetition to clinch. So that's nice too. It gives you the repetitive edge. Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, we'll definitely share that and tag you in these posts. It's been such a pleasure, Amy. Thank you so much for writing such an incredible book. Tell us where we would get the book and one piece of advice you have for any hopeful writer.
Yeah. So, well, the book will be on Amazon, of course. So that's probably the best place to get it. But I think looking at my website to get the links and so on, I have an audiobook and ebook and paperback. And one piece of advice for writers, well, I'm going to say this quickly, but in the basis of some of my work too, is that if we have fear, we won't self-express. And we have to use vulnerability to surpass the fear to move into self-expression. So I would say continue, like you were saying, Azul, to be vulnerable and allow. And it's okay. I feel like this book, maybe I was a little more safe than I normally would be because I'm a risk taker. But I was okay with that because I knew there were more books in me, right? And so I can just my
Yeah,
warm up moving in, and yeah, the purpose of it is met for sure.
that's great. I love that. And I think people's perfectionism is a part of that structure you talk about. Stop.
Yeah, it is.
You,
It is.
you're
It's not
perfect
real.
and you're not. So let
Yeah.
go.
Well, but it's
Awesome.
there's a
Thanks
black
so
and white
much.
system. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a black and white system.
Yeah.
So think gray. Maybe that's why I should embrace the gray. Think gray. All right. This is amazing. Amy, you and I can talk all day. Everyone buy the
I
book.
know.
You'll understand if you read no. And I'm so grateful that you've been in our show. Have an amazing day. Thank you all for being here.